Okay, rulers, settle down. Ruler School is brought to you by Odyssey Games, where you can go to get pre-orders of all the upcoming Force of Will sets, as well as releases of previous sets after they come out. TCGPrime.com, with over 100,000 Force of Will singles, as well as out-of-print boxes from the past, and TCG accessories, as well as FoulLibrary.com, a wonderful resource for deck lists, article discussions, and more. Check them out at FoulLibrary.com, as well as these amazing patrons. Special thanks to guest lecturer member Vite Ramen. Thank you for your support. Class is in session. Hey there, rulers, DMO73 here, bringing you the commentary on what is sure to be one of the most hurt-your-brain feature matches we've had in quite some time. This is a Loki Mirror between myself playing Take 2 on the Loki Discard deck that we played earlier, versus Dequan, who is playing his take on Loki that's designed to just have way more cards in hand. It's designed to just constantly keep its hands full. And is called, I've nicknamed it Full Grip Loki, purely from the sake of it's playing more copies of Volmel, it's playing more stuff to kind of keep its hand filled without having to use quite as many cards. It's using things like Loki's Curse to keep kind of coming back to its hand over and over again, so he just has the most options possible as the game goes on. So yeah, Loki Mirrors are interesting in the sense that, like, you don't know, you don't know when to kind of use Loki's ability, right? Because using Loki's ability helps the other Loki, because they like having their Jade Ruler destroyed, so you really got to figure it out. And it's sure to be a very interesting back and forth here as the two of us try to figure it out during the match. So, Dequan will be going second, as I rolled the higher number there, and we'll see who gets to order first. We're probably also in for some very similar opening lines from both decks, just because the early game for Loki is going to look pretty similar regardless of what build style you're using for them. So finishing up mulligans here, and then we'll jump right in. It'll be also interesting to see the differences between potential stone bases based on kind of how we've built the decks. Giving Dequan the good old neat card to use as his coin as he's going second, and then we pass turn. There's certainly an advantage to getting the coin as Loki, so that you can like order a 1-drop like right away, especially if you don't hit that 6-stage stone like you see here. Just call stone pass. It's not super hugely detrimental to not hit order on turn 1 in this mirror, I would imagine, simply because of the fact that there's like no pop off from Loki. We see that coin out for a Volmel, pretty standard opening play that we saw. And the last one gets to draw 3, then call stone, just hits a basic water, and then passes the turn there. Potentially. I don't really know what else you would do here outside of maybe search. Oh, he's discarding to hand size. Then we're going to see, I say, hey, you know what? That move is pretty good. I like it. Let me also do that. We're going to go ahead and use our 1 and order a Volmel as well, and then call stone, and then pass, and once again move to cleanup. I get a little bit better of a discard here in the fact that I get to discard a Garmheld, which now it's just going to make my Garmhelds for the rest of the game cheaper. That certainly puts me at a little bit of advantage, which I think in this matchup it's going to be all about sneaking out the tiniest little bits of advantage that you can, and kind of grinding out the opponent. So before recovery here, we see a Loki enters the Game of Gods. He uses it to produce black. And then what you're going to see is you're going to see him recover and try to use that black for something. Because it's locals, Dequan is still kind of figuring things out. I let the sequencing kind of go through. Keep in mind here, though, that floating will vanishes as you recover stones, and also vanishes at the end of the turn. So you can't do what Dequan did here. So keep that in mind. Again, because it's locals, because we're just kind of and it gives me something to talk about here as a reminder. I let him kind of follow through with it. Now, if Call of Darkness had quick cast, that would have been totally fine, because you could float black, use it, and then move to recovery. But because Call does not have quick cast, that sequence doesn't work. Hopefully that the one extra blue stone doesn't super become relevant in the next turn, because if it doesn't, then it's essentially as if he had just tapped the stone for black during his turn anyway. But we'll see how it goes. Call of Darkness here, getting to go get a Schmel, and then I think the 3-drop blue giant, keeping that handful. Like I said, a lot of +2s. Yeah, deciding. So Schmel will count as the villain, and then he can grab a giant without a villain because he's playing as Loki. Yeah, the 3-drop giant that you have to target if you control both the tails and villains. I think it's Giant Evolution. I might be wrong there. So once again, both of our Volmos right now have Eternal. And him using a Loki Enters the Game of Gods this early is actually pretty advantageous for me. These cards, Loki Enters is probably the card that in the mirror gives you the most flexibility, in the sense that, like, your resonators, you don't really necessarily have to care too much about popping your J ruler or them popping your J ruler. You can still kind of make use of your cards effectively there, because disrupting when Loki is going to destroy their J ruler, their own J ruler, is actually a pretty big deal. It's one of the reasons why I think there is some world where, because of Magic Stone of Tides, if you have a Loki Enters the Game of Gods, Magic Stone of Tides suddenly becomes a lot better, like if you have it in hand, because what you can do is you can do the choose random mode, and if you get, like on your turn especially, if you get blue, then you can just use Loki Enters the Game of Gods, turn it into the color you need anyway, that kind of thing. Or if you get the off color, then you probably only needed one of that off color anyway, so it works out. So Magic Stone of the Tides actually has quite a bit of implication for Loki, even outside of having a Dolly on field. Nothing else during his turn, so we're going to move to my turn. Seeing if there's anything before draw on my turn. Nope, still just discarding the hand size. So we draw. And then before recovery, we're going to go ahead and say, look, I'm going to turn both of our Volmos off. They no longer have Eternal. They can't lose the ability to pop ordered cards. That comes from the order and it can't be removed. But it does make us both not Eternal. So now suddenly we're turned on. This again is probably the call, because of the fact that he's used that Loki Enters the Game of Gods already. That puts me at an advantage here, where even if I destroy his Volmo, in order to capitalize on that destruction of the Volmo, he has to have a Loki Enters the Game of Gods. Whereas for me, I just need a Resonator. You can see it looks like I have at least 2 Schmels in that hand. So we can see how that goes. So we got what we wanted here. He blocks with the Volmo, so they're both not Eternal. I don't even have to worry about using the Loki effect here, because like I want my J ruler to die this turn. So it also kills his. I don't have to worry about, do I pop his or do I pop mine? I just took care of both, which is pretty good. Now what we can do here is we can use one. This is a new addition. We're playing Giants Advance. So this produces us 2 Will of any color to be able to play Giants. This is a new addition to the deck. It's certainly something we just used. I noticed that there were times where I needed the black Will for something, or there's a tech card you'll see later that Giants Advance is helpful for. It also is great for situations like this. So we order the Schmel. We do have a second copy of Loki Enters the Game of Gods here. Looks like we're probably going to see an ordered Schmel from Dequan as well. So we're both going to be getting rid of a lot of cards from our hands. Thankfully, I do see a second Volmol in my hand to be able to replenish. Oh, so he's choosing just to produce the will and then making me discard. Interesting. And then just choosing to discard. Using the other floating black, because it doesn't have to be ordered to cost 1, we're going to cast a second Schmel. And then in response to that, we're going to see the ordered Schmel. So, yeah, this is about what I expected. We're going to have to discard a couple cards. There goes a Garmheld and the 4-drop Giant. 4-drop Giant doesn't do much in this matchup. Second Garmheld just means that my third Garmheld will cost 1, which is great. And now I have 2 Schmels, which is pretty huge. The one that gets non-ordered is just a 13/13 that when it dies applies to -10, which is just fine for me, because it's also just a threatening body. Now you see one of those cards that he discarded to my effect is Loki's Curse, and like you see there, it doesn't end up mattering that he didn't have that 1 stone. It matters here in the sense of being able to he also casts Loki's Curse here in just a second, and he technically wouldn't have been able to do that, but you know, with the number of blockers, the number of resonators we have, all in all, it just doesn't super matter too much here. I don't think there's going to be any changes of life total. Yeah, if he had tapped properly for the Call of Darkness earlier, he wouldn't be able to cast Loki's Curse here. But it's all good. He's going to go ahead and tap my ordered J-Ruler, and then move to recovery. So Loki's Curse is probably a pretty interesting card to have in the main board. It's certainly something that I'm sideboarding for specifically Mistletoe. The idea of being able to always keep Mistletoe locked down is very, very nice, because we don't really have a way to destroy her necessarily easily. And Loki's Curse is a good way to say, like, look, she's going to be huge, she's going to be as big as you want, but she'll just never get to swing, which feels fine. Got to be pretty careful here about how to go to combat. He's swinging in with Schmel for 13. He's just going to let the trade here happen. But then both of these are going to die to put 2 -10 -10s on the board. Before the first one resolves, he's going to go here. After the second one resolves, or first one resolves, but before the second one resolves, we see a Fenrir come into play, which is then going to let him, because he can order it, it'll survive the first -10 because of the +4/+4. Then he can remove all the attack from my Schmel, and then kill my Schmel, which will apply a third -10 -10 to the board, wiping both sides of the field, and he'll get to draw a card when the Fenrir dies. So, -30, -30 currently on the field, which is pretty intense. But you know what doesn't care about how big the stat neg on the board is? Stuff with Eternal, which is helpful for us here, because what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and use Loki Enters to turn into some filtering, seeing if he has any thing he wants to do before moving to end phase. Says, no, I'm just going to move to end phase, that's fine. So what we're going to do is we're going to do Loki Enters the Game of Gods to give our stuff quick cast, get that extra blue, and then we're going to order a Volmol. So Volmol's great here, has Eternal, so it'll get to survive regardless of the fact that it is now a -26, -26, and then we can draw for turn. We see that third Garmheld, which is great here, and then even before recovery get to cast Skidblanir, which will get us another Giant. So even after all that, we got a lot of value off of that sequence. We start to go for the addition, and I think we change our minds about the addition because we have a Call of Darkness in hand. So we end up grabbing the new card into the main board, which would be Hegel. something we've toyed around with because there are some matchups where slamming a Hegel just wins. I've had some games against Kaguya in this new version of the deck where I slam the Hegel properly to just after like forcing their hand to be super low or like doing some good grinds. And it puts me in a really good position to kind of limit their clawback options, if you were. So we're going to go ahead and move into combat with an unblockable Volmel. Take that 400 damage. Pay 1 blue. Seeing if there's a response. He's going to go ahead to do the card I'm about to cast. Would have had to be in response to the card the response. Oh yes, sorry, no. I was using the ability of Volmel to try to remove all of its abilities. He responds with a Dark Sun. Forces me to banish Skidblanir because he doesn't want me to get it back to my hand. But we actually set up really nicely there. So what we can do is we can use Giant's Advance to produce double white, and then we can order the Hegel. And this is the crazy part about this matchup is in this matchup, if you're not playing spot removal in the form of spells like we're doing with Thunder Parasol, an ordered Hegel calling Resonators is pretty detrimental because suddenly can't play Schmells, can't play a J Ruler to be able to then kill it and make things cheaper, can't play a Volmel to replenish your hand. Like the deck can't play a Garmheld. Like the deck is very Resonator heavy, and we're trying to find him his Loki's Curse here. Sorry for this horrible card throwing around of cards. We see that and go, wait, no, goes there, that goes there. Who's on first? What's on second? Call of Darkness Engrave. So yeah, the ordered Hegel calling Resonators because he's tapped out is huge. This essentially keeps us completely locked out, or him completely locked out from being able to order anything, which is really bad for Loki. Loki's best ability is the ability to pop other ordered cards. And like he can play the Addition, but the Addition doesn't do anything really, or like Utgard doesn't do anything because he can't get a J Ruler. It comes down to whether or not he's playing spell-based spot removal in this deck, which is one of the reasons why the Loki deck is playing Thunder Parasols, just so we have something. But otherwise, this is a not good position for Dequan to be in. So hit a 6 Sage Stone post Stone Call, paying 3. We see a Loki strategy here to try to, unfortunately, having to pay full cost for it. And I think only paying 3, or just doing the mode to draw a card, so just cycling, trying to dig into something, which is a lot. Pay 3, draw a card is not great. I think it probably would have been better here to at least like call Stone pass and then like try to do it during upkeep to at least threaten something else. I mean, he is going to be able to stall for quite a while from being able to take damage because of these Loki's curses that get to keep coming back to his hand each turn. Loki traditionally doesn't go very wide, so that is how it is. After recovery, but before moving to main phase, he says, I'm going to go ahead and use the Loki's Curse to tap you down. In response to that, we're going to float some black so that we can just hard cast a Schmel. We don't need to rip his hands to shreds. We're banking on Hegel, keep it locking us through to the end of the game. So we'll say, look, if you're going to be tapping us down, let's just start going wide. And we'll do that by playing the Hegel, or by playing the Schmel. Unfortunately, did not hit another 6 Sage Stone there, so those stones are currently void. So we're just having to discard due to hand size and passes the turn, discarding a Garmheld, which, if he can somehow find a way to clear the Hegel off the board, will be great for later. After recovery, we see once again a tap down from Loki's Curse. We'll float some Will. And then a second tap down for a second Hegel. The reason why we're floating Will here is because he's about to, our 6H stone is about to be, our 6H stone's about to be not able to produce color because he tapped down our Hegel. Now we'll still be able to call stone, which is helpful, especially if we hit another 6H stone, but it's better to just like float the Will now before you completely waste it. So using Call of Darkness to grab another Hegel and an Utgard. Seemingly choosing not to call stone. Interesting. You can call stone tapped, which is a big thing for orders. Still seeing if there's a way for him to claw back, trying to find some form of removal to deal with this Hegel. Or this, this Hegel. Now, I have put myself in a bit of a bad position by casting my own Schmel here. There is an inherent risk. If Dequan has a Dark Sun, that will force me to ban, and I don't have something else to quick cast in, that will force me to banish the Schmel, which will then kill the Hegel because of the neg 10. So it is very possible, having seen the Dark Sun, that we could be in a lot of trouble. Additions are not chance, are not resonators, so you can get around that. We do see the Utgard come down, which unfortunately isn't going to do much. And then we say, look, we know you're going to have you have two Loki's Curses. We got to start applying some pressure here. So what we're going to do is flash in. Loki enters the game of gods. Flash in a full costed Schmel at the end of your turn, just to say, look, I can start beating you to death with 1300s, and then we'll go from there. Calling stone. There's a recovery. Trying to move into combat. We see two Loki's Curses come down to tap down the two Schmels. So he takes 1,000 and we drain 1,000, which is great. And then we can just pass the turn. We don't care about the floating Will there. We got plenty of stuff in our hand. Oh, we do have our own Dark Sun, but the Will is currently tapped. So that's pretty helpful. We do have a backup if he makes us try to RFG something. We can try to high roll into a potential Dark Sun. But ultimately he says, nope, I didn't draw anything. That's going to be it. Let's move on to game 2. So that ordered Hegel, truly showing that, it's can be detrimental to make Loki too prevalent, too focused on their resonators. You got to have some other avenues here, some other tricks up your sleeve to be able to push through some plays like that. Also just showing the power of Hegel. A well-resolved Hegel in the order matchups can be pretty devastating. He's choosing to take the draw. We see a first turn play that everybody loves. We see a turn 1 Volmel and then into a pass. He's going to go ahead and coin out Volmel. Now this is the interesting part, which is a little bit unfortunate for him. We're going to go ahead and use Loki's Deception and RFG 2 water cards from our hand to steal the enter effect of the Volmel and draw 2 cards. So we go card -1 there, but it does steal his Volmel's enter effect, which is pretty huge for keeping the card value up here. And then we see a Call of Darkness here to draw a couple more cards. So tapping him out, putting us in a good position to kind of manipulate the board state, keep things where we want them, especially since there's a world where we call stone, turn off Volmel like we did before, pop our own Volmel, and then immediately go into a Schmel, which is pretty huge, because we can turn off his Volmel as well. So we turn off his and ours. And he doesn't have the will to be able to capitalize it because of the fact that he's having to make up for getting some cards stolen by trying to draw more cards and thus tapping himself out. Going into my next turn here. Hitting the second 6-stage zone here feels kind of rough. We kind of have to commit to at least a little bit of will before we can make anything. We're going to go ahead and call it Darkness. You might just see a pass here as well. Down comes the Haggle here. We said, hey, it proved pretty great last time. Let's think about grabbing it again. But then we have to grab either the 4-drop giant or the addition. The thing about Call of Darkness is it can be very tempting to grab Schmel or one of your giants, but we also have a couple copies of Squid.exe. Garmheld is only searchable from Call of Darkness, so you got to be kind of really careful exactly what you grab and when with Loki. That's the thing I've said for a while, is that Loki is very complicated to figure out and build properly and pilot effectively. But if you can figure it out, if you get the hang of it, you're in a really, really good spot. So unfortunately, we just grabbed the Haggle, and then we have to move to discards. We're going to discard that Dark Sun. Not really doing too much in this matchup. Not expecting to see any kind of banishes in terms of cost. So doesn't do too much. And then both Loki typically keeps like maybe 1 or 2 things on field at most. So the banish doesn't also really do much either. Leaving that 1 will up because we need to. Always threatening a Loki enters with a Garmheld. A Loki enters with a Schmel to make the opponent's turn feel awkward in this mirror. Ultimately just choosing to call Stone Pass. Seeing what we have here before recovery. I think we have a Fairy of Trickery here. There's a world where we try to cast that now. Ultimately, though, we are gonna go ahead and go for that. So we're gonna use Fairy of Trickery to try to tap down his Volmel. This will give us a free turn, essentially. It also means that his Volmel can't recover during his opponent's next turn, which does nothing because, again, you can call Stone while tapped. But against other matchups, it's pretty good. And even just by itself, Fairy of Trickery is a really, really good card to threaten some pressure without being too concerned. It's a flyer. It only costs me 1. It's a 6/7 quick cast. Puts in a lot of work. Gonna do Giant's Advance, or thinking about doing Giant's Advance. We know we have that Haggle. The unfortunate thing is he has a Loki out. So the play here is in order to make Haggle work in this matchup, you have to play Haggle when they don't have a way to get Loki on field, so that you successfully lock them out. Ordering a Haggle into a Loki already on field does nothing. They'll just pop it. Or even if they have Loki enters the Game of Gods, they can like do that in response to Haggle and then pop it. So you have to kind of force your opponent to tap out or be in a bad position, and then you can capitalize on that by slamming a Haggle to try to close the door and win the game. So we're just gonna pass. We got a full grip of 7 cards. Before recovery, we're going to see that Loki's Curse come down here to tap down the Fairy. Also, I'm surprised by how good that card has been in the mirror, particularly because Loki decks don't go wide. So this repeatable tap down really does help to serve to prevent damage. It keeps you alive, keeps the game going a lot longer. It's just free. The card just keeps coming back to your hand every single turn. You can use it on your opponent's, you can use it pre-recovery like here. You can use it during your opponent's combat and then recover it back during your turn. You saw, even just those 2 copies stalled him for like 2.5 turns. It's pretty good. I'm impressed. The other nice thing about Fairy of Trickery here is it makes his 6-stage stone not do nearly as much. Because it's like just your guy's tapped. So even if you call stone, even if you hit a 6-stage stone there, it's just still a void stone. So he's going to try to use Volmel to remove the ability from Volmel and the Fairy of Trickery. In response to that, we're going to try to use our Volmel to remove the ability from his Volmel and my Volmel, and then see what happens. He says that's fine, and then he's going to pop his own Loki here, or he's going to pop his own Volmel, which turns it back on, and we see a Dark Mage of m.ha. So this is still before my Volmel's effect has resolved. Or this is after my Volmel's effect is resolved. So I no longer have Eternal. He's going to target my Volmel, I think, with the neg4. And then it'll force me to banish the Fairy of Trickery. Oh no, I think he chose to target the Fairy of Trickery, so that's a little bit of a misplay. Could have targeted Volmel and killed it. I suppose there's a world where he doesn't want to kill my J-Ruler for me, forces me to do it, which is totally fair. We end up getting around it in here anyway. So targets the Fairy. She doesn't have her abilities anymore because of the Volmel removal when all that stuff happened. Then we see have to discard a card because I can only banish one thing. We're going to order into a Fenrir, which will then kill his Dark Mage, which then he responds by using his Loki to kill my Fenrir. All in all, that works out in our favor best because of the fact that he's already ordered once this turn. And we're going to see that other Giants advance. So down comes a 4-cost ordered Schmel before recovery here to force him to discard 2 cards. Calling Stone after ordering, so we at least have some kind of responses stuff. Do hit the Magic Stone of Tides. And then of that, we just pass turn. So Giant's Advance really does do a lot. It also helps to like be able to recover and like push through lethal, right? Giant's Advance can be used with the addition. Like you can swing once for 20, recover it, swing once for 20, and just like find your 40 right there if you need to close the game out, which can be pretty huge. Loki is a grindy deck, so any way that you can use to kind of push yourself further or find the lethal faster can be very helpful. See another 6-stage stone come down here. If you're wondering why Dequan's 6-stage stones look a little different, it is because they are proxies that we use for our locals so that they can get the most out of the game. Brought to you by Rustin, the YouTuber Rustin WW, who is a supporter on the channel, and also has his own channel, makes a lot of amazing customs for use for just these kinds of situations. So it's been very helpful for our locals as we're trying to get more 6-stage stones, regular 6-stage stones for them to be able to use these proxies. I highly recommend reaching out to Rustin if you need them. Obviously, they're not tournament legal, but if you're looking for a really high quality foil proxy to use for fun with your friends, Rustin's definitely the place to go. So we see a 4-costed, pay all 4 stones for a 4-costed Schmel. That's pretty huge to put that there. It gives us a really strong opportunity. If we had a Loki enters the Game of Gods, this is the turn that can kind of win us the game, especially considering you see we have those 6-stage stones. So what happens with the best option to be here if we had a Loki enters, which I think we do, we're going to float some will, we're going to swing in for 13, he's going to take it. The best option here is to just try to pop his Schmel right here to apply a neg 10, and then hope he does it back, like forces a neg 20, to see if we can try to get his stuff killed. You see we do have Utgard here, which we'll be able to play, which will be very nice. Because if we can force him to kill our Schmel, with his Loki before his Utgard dies. Then we can wait till his turn before recovery, Game of Gods, into Hegel, into Lockout of Resonators, and just be in the same spot we were before. He, in response to the Loki trigger, uses Loki's Deception to redirect my Loki ability back to my own Schmel. This sucks. This is a really good play by Dequan. It puts him in a really good spot. He gets to sit on his Schmel for another turn because it'll survive the neg 10. And that puts us in a spot to say, well, we're going to have to do something. We do get to rip a lot of cards out of his hand by doing this, though. So Deception goes there. The neg 10 now applies to the board. We've got that one floating from there. We're going to still have the floating black. Because a J Ruler died, we have Arena Invasion, Expansion, Utgard. This is a pretty good spot. And then we're going to use the black that we floated earlier to play a Dark Zone. So it looks like we don't have a Schmel. So it looks like the only cards in hand right now are a Hegel and a Loki enters the Game of Gods. So this Dark Zone not doing much for us here. We're going to have to take at least a turn worth of damage from this ordered Schmel. Before recovery, we start to think about maybe using Loki enters the Game of Gods, ultimately saying, no, that's fine, we're just going to pass. Swinging in for 13, we say, yep, that's fine, we'll take it. No way to block it, no way to stop it, and we're not going to waste our Hegel now. Stone Call, 3 Void Stones though. That's the unfortunate part of this, is 6 Sage Stone doesn't recover a J Ruler, so just has access to 3 stones. This is the game of the full cost Schmels. We're going to go ahead and order a Schmel to force him to discard. I think this puts him down to 0 cards in hand, or pretty close to. Discards another Schmel, which is great. Calling Stone. I think it's... oh, the cards in hand are Loki's Deception, and maybe I discarded the Hegel earlier to one of his Schmels. Loki's Deception and a Loki enters the Game of Gods. We're going to see a Call of Darkness come down on his side. Say that's fine. He's allowed to search. See what he's going to grab here. At this point in time, I think we're both out of Schmels. He is going to grab a Fenrir and the 4-drop Giant. These are pretty good. Fenrir's pretty good here. The ability to have that quick cast element. The Giant's not super great in this matchup unless he has Loki enters the Game of Gods, because again, he has to be ordered. So him coming into play tapped isn't super great. Does decide to grab the Giant plus a Garmheld. What is he going to do with this turn? There is a Garmheld Engrave, but he's got an ordered Schmel, so that doesn't feel super great. Because anything that he's going to order, like, he's going to have to deal with the neg 10, which is not super great. He also has to deal with the fact that whatever he orders has to deal with the Loki coming in. Chooses to swing in for 13 before we do anything else, which we say, yeah, that's fine. We'll go down to 14. I'm not sure if there's anything terribly concerning that might come down here to push through for 14 damage outside of, like, 14 damage is a Lovecraft from Garmheld, but it'll be a neg 10, so he'll immediately kill his own Garmheld and he'll be only an 8/8, and we could potentially make that even lower by just killing our own Schmel to apply a -20. So then, like, the Lovecraft is doing 0, so that's not a threat here. So we are going to see a hard-casted Underground Giant, which just comes into play tapped. So if, with where we are, this isn't a terrible position. Like, based on what is in Dequan's hand, this isn't a terrible spot. Like, this is threatening potential lethal. Like, Underground Giant has barrier. There's no way for me to really kill it effectively this turn. The problem comes into the fact that we've got 2 Schmels on board. This is the biggest threat. Floating 1 black here before we get started. Black and I think a blue. Moving into combat, we see 13 going in. Says that's fine. Goes down to 14. And now's where we get to do some silly stuff. We are going to try to use our Schmel to pop our own Schmel. And then what we get to do is we get to stack the triggers of Schmel's Death Trigger and the Arena trigger, which will come up here in just a second. So we're waiting to see if he has a response to the Loki effect. So the Loki effect resolves. It's going to kill my Schmel. We're going to stack the triggers of the Schmel and the Arena expansion because they go off simultaneously. So that Schmel resolves first, which means the -10 is applied to the board, and then the expansion becomes a 2020. So it creates a later timestamp, so it still gets to keep its 2020 stat line, despite the -10. So we're threatening to swing in for lethal. He has to pop his own Schmel here, which will take it down to being a -10, but it'll also kill his giant, which is fine with us. This is exactly what we wanted. We can then use the 1 black that we had floating. We've done our 1,000 damage. We've done it. We've hit him. He's down to 400 life. This is a very good spot for us. We just need to keep things fair there. So we're going to go ahead and use the floating blue. I guess we floated double blue. Maybe just trying to draw. We floated blue black, and maybe we're trying to draw into something here. Then we're going to use that floating black from the Loki enters the Game of Gods at this point to order a Schmel, who will immediately die, applying another -10 to the board, so a -30, killing my addition, but also forces him to be at 0 cards. So you see we have a Skidblinier in hand, which we can then use the other floating will from our stones to go grab. Gets us a giant. Gets us this potential Haggle. I think Underground Giant might actually be the last giant we have in the deck. I think we're digging through. Yeah, Underground Giant is the last one we have in the deck. But it does get us a body, right? So that's pretty good. So we have 2 cards in our hand to Dequan's 0. We've gotten him down to exactly 0 cards. So this is pretty good. I mean, it's kind of either person's game here. If he top decks a Garmheld, that puts us in a bad spot. But not terribly, because we actually are sitting on a Loki's Deception, which feels really good for this exact kind of scenario. And it's exactly what we wanted. The Dequan top decks a full mole, and we just full cast Loki's Deception to steal the enter effect and draw 3 cards. So we turn his top deck into us drawing 3, which puts us in an insane position to close out this game. So yeah, get to steal the enter effect. I draw 3. Dequan is left with exactly 0 cards in hand and a Volmole, which is not going to do anything against a board that he's staring down. I mean, I don't have any attackers. I can't attack this turn, but I do have a Garmheld, and that's the thing that matters the most. So we RFG 1 Garmheld. There is a second one in there, I believe. Ultimately choosing to just pay 2. We order the Garmheld. We come into play as a Lovecraft. Even if he destroys it with Loki, last known information still sees its attack as being 1800 damage, or 1800. So 1800 damage gets shot to Dequan's face, and that closes out the game. So there you guys have it. That is the intense back and forth strategy of a Loki Mirror. Dequan and I were both the whole game. Like, what do we do? It's very complicated. It's very complex to play this mirror. The little tweaks in build design really do make a lot of difference. We'll be putting up Dequan's list later this week. So until next time, thank you guys so much for watching. And this is Jeremy saying, class dismissed.